Welcome back to Dollars and Nonsense. This is Nate. We've got Michael here today. And Michael, this is my last Dollars and Nonsense podcast that will
What?
be recorded.
You're not, no,
That's
you're not allowed to
great.
leave. Sorry. No.
That's right. So for those of you who are just jumping back in, yeah, I'm stepping out into ministry. This is the last Living Wealth podcast I'm doing. I'm excited to do it. I know a lot of people have asked how they could follow along with me. And I have a YouTube channel, a Nathaniel Scott YouTube channel, Nathaniel Scott Ministries, and you can go subscribe to that if you want to follow along. I'll post sermons and all sorts of things on that channel. But today this is infinite banking. This is finance. This is my last real venture into it. I'm super excited for it, Michael. And I'm also
Yeah.
super excited for your future in it as you take over.
Yeah. Thank you. I
Wealth
don't know.
and
What do you guys think? I think we should tie Nate up and make him stay.
yeah, I'm sure I'll be back at some point to go hop on another podcast with Michael. But
Yeah, but
you know,
thanks, Nate. I'm really excited to be jumping into what I'm jumping into too. I've just continued to see the Lord just put all the pieces needed in place one after the other.
yeah,
So it's awesome.
his hand's been on it for a long time, working in our
Yeah.
hearts for a long time to end where we're supposed to end up, and that's kind of what I wanted to do in this show, Michael. And we were talking about it before we hopped on, which is just like, hey, if this is going to be my last show, which kind of is, after we've been doing this show, by the way, Michael, I think since 2016, so it's 8 years of this show,
Wow.
and you're going to continue it. But as far as with me stepping down, what would be the last words of advice that I would want to leave to the audience? Like, what is
Hmm.
the things after being in infinite banking for so long, helping so many people establish it, just being in the world of finance,
Hmm.
and there's really three main things I would like to end with
Yeah.
as kind of the culmination
Yep.
of the career. Like, if you get these three things, I think it'll go well with you financially. Honestly, no matter what you do.
Yep.
So
Yep. That's
um,
right.
let's just dive in.
Great. That sounds awesome.
All right. So the first thing I wanted to leave with everybody is that in God's word it says, without faith, it is impossible to please God.
Yeah.
And this started to really make sense in the world of money to me recently. That without faith in your financial world, the whole financial thing that you end up doing is going to be hamstrung from the start.
Mm.
It's not going to do for you what you think it's going to do for you.
Mm.
So after being in this business for 12 years, I've actually come to discover that most people are trying to create an environment financially in which where faith isn't required, where they are totally self-established and
Mm.
God is not needed. So without faith, it's impossible to please God. Without faith, it's really impossible to please God with your money. So one of the things I wanted to push forth is that if you want to really find success with money, I think that you should build an environment where you are not always, at all times, in control and understanding everything that you're doing all the time, and essentially tight-fisted, because you'll end up grasping for things. You'll end up clutching
Mm.
to things, and you'll actually
Mhm.
produce a ton of stress and anxiety. This is the reason why I've been so against retirement programs without truly knowing, or just the idea of retirement in itself, without truly knowing why. The reason was that the whole concept is all of your money has strings attached to it.
Mm.
It has an agenda at all times. And you have placed your agenda into your life, in which case God really can't move in it very much. So without faith, if your whole goal, saving money and investing money, is to essentially get you to a place where you're so self-sufficient that you don't need God anymore, if that's the heart of it,
Mhm.
then you're actually getting off track.
Yeah.
There needs to be a different motivation for why you're doing what
Mhm.
you're doing with your money
Mhm.
than
Mhm.
just to not need God anymore.
Mhm.
And the reality is, as we've talked about, Michael, you will always need God. You just
Yeah.
can the more money you have, the more easy it becomes to lie to yourself.
Yeah.
So that's what happens. the wealthier you get, it becomes easier to lie in your heart to yourself and become deceived that you don't actually need God,
Mm-hmm.
and that you are self-sufficient, self-reliant.
Yeah. And what we were talking about before the show is like, what if we developed an attitude or a heart posture of, as we get more wealthy, we actually trust God more.
It's the goal.
That's the goal. And then actually what happens is, then I believe what happens then is like you start to experience like this crazy 10x growth where, I mean, it's kind of simple. Like, if I start to trust myself more and more and more, the wealthier that I get, then my money becomes more and more and more managed and spent the way that I think it should be rather than the way God thinks it should be. So, I mean, I really know that the level of abundance and blessing and everything that I've stepped into is because I stepped out in faith to do an apprenticeship with Ray
Yeah.
and with you. And I
All good things start with faith.
they do, and
And
they
they have to be supported with faith the entire time, and they have to end
yeah.
in faith, otherwise you lose it.
Otherwise
So
you lose
I
it.
mean,
That's right.
you can even retire rich. You can have built this whole system with all of your agendas to end up in a certain place that you don't need anybody else. You don't need God. You don't
Mm-hmm.
even need a job. You don't even need to
Mm-hmm.
work anymore.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
so rich. You've been a good steward with the money,
Yeah.
and you've had no faith, and it will all end up feeling like vanity.
Mm.
That's what it will end up feeling like,
Unless you stay in that faith.
unless you stay in faith.
So it's this weird thing that you see. I mean, you can see it in businesses, you can see it in families, relationships, marriages, and you definitely see it in churches. I mean, where when if you go back to when something started, it started with this explosion of faith, this incredible move of God, and where people did things that looked like it was a huge risk, but because they heard from God, and then slowly they just kind of um, they take this awesome thing that God gave them, and they just kind of slowly take it over with their own human ideas and their own thoughts and their own imagination of where they think it should go. And then what happens is the blessing and the hand of God just sort of fades out of the enterprise, the whole scenario. And what we're saying here is, like, without faith, without that continued faith, like, keep your ears open, keep your eyes open to what God wants. And but by the way, this is what they do so well at teaching at Kingdom at Work, is that, look, like, this huge explosion of faith we had at our company, we're building 800 something homes a year, or whatever, and we get to the point where we think we know it, we really know how to do this. Okay, now we know how to operate this enterprise, and then God asks them to do something that makes no sense.
Yeah.
Like, all the knowledge that you have and all the expertise that you have, and then God says, try this, and they're
Hmm.
like, that makes no sense. But then if they step out in faith and they do it, man, I was just at Encounter, and Luke preached on financial freedom, and he said God is a financial savant. Like, he's the greatest accountant in the universe. And so, like, that's what God has shown them and asked them to do. Like, try this. And then you actually begin to see, like, oh, that was financially genius. Like, God's
But it always
purpose,
doesn't look financially genius when you
it,
do it.
yeah,
That's the
because we
thing
didn't
about
have the
faith.
knowledge. And so
So we always think
God's
that we are
purpose
the
is,
financial genius, and
yeah,
that whenever we like we do things that make sense to us, and
yes.
what my opinion will be, and we're going to get to this in the third. So I've got three principles I want to give. We'll get into this with the third one even more.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole concept is, I think that to truly walk in faith, you have to have money that doesn't have an agenda. It has to be open to
Mm,
be used by God. It's as soon as you put firm agendas on what you're like, you have your money, it's going to do this, you have this money's going to do this, and you have all of your money is tied to your own agendas.
mm-hmm.
You become unable to be used by God. So, I mean, that was my first thing, Michael, really was to get at is, yeah, without like, you can build your entire life with the whole goal of being totally self-sufficient, self-reliant, and then you'll realize the whole thing was vanity. And that really what you needed was faith. What you needed was God, not to to
Yeah,
have.
like, yeah, wouldn't it be terrible if you spent your whole life building this massive enterprise and then at the end you get to the end and it didn't matter or
Yeah.
it all failed or whatever. Or I
Yeah,
mean
God gave you the ability to build the enterprise, and then you took the enterprise over for yourself, thought it was all for you, and then you
yeah.
started working in your own power to keep it afloat the whole
Yeah.
time, and you realized that the idea is just simply that most people are kind of deceived. What they like, they're in that they would never say that's what I want,
Mm-hmm.
but yet they find themselves in it, and they look back and they realize at some point they got deceived. That's kind of what happened
Mm-hmm.
to me, even in business, just in general. Just by the way, you get it's hard to have a lot of money and to have a lot of success and not to start deceiving yourself honestly about how
Mm-hmm.
self-reliant and self
Mm-hmm.
uh,
I got this
able
figured
you
out.
are now. I know what I'm doing now.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then the Lord will sometimes call you to do something that doesn't make any sense, like leaving living wealth to go into ministry and going from the top of a mountain in one world to the bottom of a different mountain with not, with starting completely over.
Mm-hmm.
All you have in front of you though is the strong desire for faith, and if it's all
Mm-hmm.
about you, you'll never hear or listen or obey God or those things, and you'll end up getting whatever you can get. It'll be probably filled with cords of vanity,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll kind of be a little bit rotten in your heart. You won't really love it. So
Mm-hmm.
that's just our encouragement.
Yeah.
Number
That's
one,
principle number one.
without faith you can't please God. Financially, your goal should not be to build a life where no faith is needed. That
Mm-hmm.
should not be the goal.
Mm-hmm.
Second thing I wanted to say, this has more to do with infinite banking, is that infinite banking must be defined the way it defines itself.
Yes.
And infinite banking is a thing in and of itself.
Yes.
You don't get to define what it is to
Correct.
determine whether you want to do it. Like,
Yeah.
all you get to decide though is whether you want to do it. So
Yeah.
so it has value propositions. It provides things for people. And I know this
Mm-hmm.
podcast might not be the number one thing to go into that. We've done millions of them. So what it
Yeah.
provides,
For more details, see all other
the all
250.
other episodes, Faith Beginner's Course, see Nelson Nash's book. For details of how it defines itself, go understand how it's defined. The question though is that everyone should ask, whether they're trying to get into it or not, is that does what infinite banking provides, do I think it's important to me or not? Now, of course, Michael and I might say we think it should be important to you, but we don't get to make that definition. All we get to
Mhm.
do is present what it is the way it's supposed to be.
That's correct.
You should then decide whether you want it for how it presents itself. Not
Yes.
Don't create some sort of new model thinking you can squeeze it into your life the way
Mhm.
you define it, and even though it has nothing to do with IBC. This is what you find happening in the world of IBC education, on YouTube, online, all over. Is there's people tickling ears. We like that phrase. People
Yes.
are trying to convince everybody that infinite banking is the answer to all things, that it provides everything for everyone, and they embellish, and they're trying to get people to come in
Sensationalize. Yeah.
like the back door, like
Mm-hmm.
get people in even though they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they've
Mm-hmm.
signed up for. This
Mm-hmm.
happens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So my biggest concern, that right, the red flag, is do not get into infinite banking. The Trying to redefine it so that it makes sense in your life.
Yeah.
It is Infinite banking produces kind of a way of life. You decide whether you like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
But if you say, I don't like all of these things Nelson Nash talked about, all of these IBC homers, people like us that really try to teach
Mm-hmm.
the way it's supposed to be, but we think life insurance is good. And so
Yeah.
we're going to buy life insurance, and then we're going to and then we'll plug it into our lives the way we see fit, and then call it infinite banking. It's like, just don't call it infinite banking. Call it whatever you
Yeah.
want. Call it the
Yeah.
powerful life insurance. Call it I like whole life insurance policy, or whatever it is. But don't sit here and say that it's IBC. IBC is a way of life. It's a philosophy,
Mm-hmm.
on how you're going to live. We talked about in the last
Mm-hmm.
episode. It's a platform for other things for your life to be built on, and it has a set of principles that you must buy into and want to adopt in your life.
Yeah.
And then you must come to the conclusion that using dividend paying whole life insurance policies is going to be the best way to accomplish those principles, and then say, yes, yes,
Yes.
okay, now I can commit my financial life to this platform that's going to move forward.
Yeah.
If you try to do it any other way than that, it becomes a thorn in your side, and you become a thorn in our side. This is how it
Yeah,
works.
the whole thing just kind of gets
You
wonky. Yeah.
it gets wonky. You'd end up not liking it down the road. You end up being a
Yeah, you
difficult
can.
client.
Yeah.
So that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. It becomes a thorn in your side. You're the one who doesn't like premiums. You're the one who can't wait to turn premiums off. You don't like to borrow money. You don't like to make loan repayments. You're the one who asks what the loan interest rate is all the time.
Yeah.
You're the one who's going to have to constantly, over and over, redecide whether it makes sense every year. Redecide to pay a premium.
Yep.
Redecide whether it makes sense to borrow money
Yep.
from the policy.
Yep.
You're going to redecide because it's all based on your agenda, and
Hmm.
you never actually adopted the real approach of infinite banking. So it's like it becomes a thorn in your side. It doesn't bring any sort of freedom or happiness. And then of course you
Hmm.
become a client that's like who got in and
Hmm.
doesn't believe what we're teaching. It's
Yeah.
like what would like if you thought you were a Dave Ramsey follower and you called him in to Dave Ramsey's radio show and you started asking him questions about the principles and trying to debate whether they actually make sense, he's like, "See you later. Go do something else." That's what it would be, and that's I
Yeah.
don't mean to be rude about that. I'm just merely saying that is true with the infinite banking
Well,
concept.
yeah, I mean,
We're presenting an idea. You don't have to like it. Then you don't have to do it.
yeah,
It's just don't try to argue with us about what it is. If you're at that point where you're trying to argue with somebody about the benefits of what it is, then just simply say, "Don't do it. You
yeah,
shouldn't do
or
it.
do more
You don't believe
research, or we can have a more general discussion. Maybe, I don't know, but yeah, it makes total sense. Like if you go to Dave, like if you were to go to Dave Ramsey and say, Dave, I want to do your program, but I think your program has all these mistakes in it, and I
Yeah,
think it's like he's like
I have improved on your program, Dave."
he's like,
Yeah,
great, go build your program
yeah,
and do it. I celebrate it. If there's any way I can help you, I will.
exactly.
But that's
You don't
not
have
our
to do this. No one is forced to do infinite banking.
right.
No one's forced to do financial makeover,
Hmm.
whatever money makeover thing, or
Hmm.
or Robert Kiyosaki. No one's forcing you to do it. It's just it actually works best if you just commit yourself to doing it the way it's taught. But if you want to go create your own way of doing it, so be it. But don't come like in other words, don't think that everyone else owes you answers to your ideas. Like just
Hmm.
do them if you think you know it's best.
Hmm.
We're just gonna keep teaching it the way it's taught. Like we're just
Hmm.
gonna keep doing the thing that we're teaching.
Hmm. Yeah.
And you're welcome to jump on the bus.
Hmm.
But there's a million other buses financially, and you can jump on those if you want to.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Okay.
thing number two.
Number
Infinite
two.
banking defines itself.
Yeah. You just get to define in your life whether you like it or
Yeah,
not.
and by the way, just as a little postscript to that, Nate and I did not define anything about infinite banking.
Oh.
We learned it from Nelson Nash and Ray Petit,
Yeah.
and we got corrected many times.
And there's this that's why you hear people talk about being able to read Nelson Nash's book many, many times.
Yeah. I tell people this, I've told many people this, Nate. Like you should listen to Nate's podcast and watch his videos. The reason is because all of that information is results of years of study and implementation of Nelson's book.
Yeah.
It takes Nelson's book and fleshes it all out with a whole bunch of practical wisdom and experience and everything like that. He's not making anything up.
Right. I'm not. And I'm not building upon something that I created. I'm just simply
No.
saying this is the idea of infinite banking. Take it or leave it,
Yeah.
but don't redefine it for
Yep.
yourself
Yeah.
and then try
That
to implement the redefinition of it
yeah.
and think that I'm going to get on board with you as your advisor doing that. Now, given I'm
Right.
leaving, I'm not. So I guess what I would say is, that's just in general as just a courtesy to the people who are in infinite banking
Hmm.
is come in and learn the way they teach it. I do know that there's tons of people on the YouTube universe and in the infinite banking crowd that have kind of redefined what it's meant to be, and it's essentially they're saying just add whole life insurance policies into your life,
Hmm.
and then you'll be good to go.
And we're not saying that doesn't work. We're
Yeah,
saying I don't know what that is. But it's not what we teach.
exactly.
Yeah.
Sure. Do we all have to understand that whole life insurance policies are sold every day,
And
all day
yeah.
for
And by the
many other
way,
purposes than infinite banking. It's
by the way,
fine.
this was the thing that persuaded me of infinite banking in the beginning when I read Nelson's book, because I could see this is not some enterprise that he invented in the 80s. And I've said this before, like he received from the Lord, from other authors, from meditating in God's word, from a and actually from a very painful business experience. He received a truth that came to him, and then he wrote a book about it.
Yeah.
And well, actually, then he made a seminar about it, and then he made the seminar into a book. He's like,
Hmm.
look, I had this incredible experience by which I discovered principles of money that changed my understanding of wealth building forever. Here's what I mean.
Yeah, I agree.
Here's what happened to me.
Yeah, and then you just get to decide whether you like that or not. This is that.
Yep.
There's no
Yep.
argument to it. Like someone could come say, "Oh, I think I've got a better way to doing it than what you guys are. We don't need policies. We can just
Maybe
do
you
something else."
do.
I'm like, do it then. That's
Yeah,
fine.
that's
I've
great.
had a
Yeah.
lot of clients talk to me about things they could do that they think would result in something better than buying a policy and using for IBC. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm sitting here like saying, what's interesting is that, but you're not doing that thing that you just described to me.
Yeah, that's right. Uh-huh.
So yes, the theory you just provided could produce a better result for all we know. And as I've said many times, in the world of money, everything is future oriented, which means there's only subjectivity.
Mm-hmm.
When you're going into an unknown future, you cannot know today what the best thing to do with your money is. That's why we
Mm-hmm.
believe principle based approaches
Mm-hmm.
produce better results over long periods of time
Mm-hmm.
than trying to find the get rich quick ticket. And I
Mm-hmm.
know no one wants to find the get rich quick ticket, but what they're asking is, what's the best thing to do with my money?
Mm-hmm.
And then they're trying to find someone who will say, I have discovered the best thing for you to do with your money. It's like
Mm-hmm.
that can't exist. Principle based
Yeah.
approaches are the ones that are sure to work for the vast majority of people the vast majority of the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's the idea. But I'll talk to people and they'll literally say that, I think you could do this another way and it would be better than using whole life insurance policies to accomplish it. In which
Yeah.
case I'm saying, yeah, you're welcome to try it. But what I find interesting is you're actually not doing that. Like the
Yeah.
thing you just
Yeah.
mentioned, you're continuing to do things the way everyone else is doing them. If you want to do it your way, then you be the test case.
That's
Go
right.
ahead. Just do
Nelson,
it.
and that's what I was saying. Nelson was the ultimate test case of this
Yeah.
before he ever did his seminar. Took a bunch of huge bad loans, like basically that were and paid him off with policy loans and paid himself back. And then he
Yeah.
was like, "Wow, that was incredible. Let me share this with you. Let me tell you
Right.
what happened to me." Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah, that's right. I mean, that's all we have
that
to
just
offer.
makes it real, you know?
Yeah, it just totally makes it
Mhm.
real.
Yeah.
You make yours real. Make your theory real.
Yeah. All
Because you
right.
have a better
That's number two.
number two. Number three, the last one, and it's very similar to the first, which is that without faith, it's impossible to really do IBC. And to do
Yeah.
infinite banking, what I mean by that is that when you do infinite banking, you are going to enter a world that you probably haven't ever been in before.
Mm-hmm.
Not just with the policies and not just with kind of the new concepts, like all of that can be new. But what I actually mean is, you're going to open a policy and start funding it without knowing where you're actually going to end up in the
Yeah,
future,
that's right.
because the policy itself is not the end. It's
Mm-hmm.
actually just the beginning
Mm-hmm.
of something.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very much different um, than your typical approach to money, especially with retirement programs. Is you kind of, like, the same thing could be true. Of course, you don't know what the rate of return is going to be in the stock market over long periods
Mm-hmm.
of time, but you kind of know where the end is. You know where you're going. You're going
Mm-hmm.
with the stock market,
Mm-hmm.
and it's probably going to go up over time. Some range, and you'll end up somewhere in the future with retirement
Right.
money.
Right.
You kind of have this end in mind. But with IBC, with infinite banking, when you get started, you get started without knowing where you're going to end up and what you're
Hmm.
going to use the policies to do.
Right.
And you actually have to go in with faith, understanding that reality. That the faith is simply, I believe that there are going to be opportunities that I can take advantage of in the future because I'm making this decision today
Right.
to do infinite banking.
Yep.
I don't know what they're going to be though,
Yep.
but I'm
Yep.
trusting that as I do this, they're going to be made available over time. I don't know if it's going to be
Those
2 years from now,
opportunities.
10
Yeah.
years from now, 20 years from now.
And
And
this
so,
is, yeah, and this is principle number 4 in your principles of infinite banking. Capital attracts opportunities.
yeah,
To believe that, you have to have faith
you have to have faith
that
because you
that
don't know
works.
what opportunity is
And
going to be. That's the thing about opportunity. Like everyone was like,
what's the opportunity going
whenever
to
I
be?
talk
I don't
about
know.
barbell investing and I talk
Barbell.
about,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
choosing to only invest in things that are what we call barbell investments, which once again, you'll have to go back to the podcast and the goal of this is not to talk about that. But what I'm trying to bring up is everyone's like, where are you finding all these barbell investment opportunities? And I'm just merely saying you you have everyone would say, well, of course, Nate, we all want those opportunities. And what I'm saying is then build your life accordingly.
Mm,
That's it.
yeah.
If you want those opportunities to come your way, build your life accordingly.
Yeah. It's sort of
That's faith.
this this comes back to a basic principle of mine, and this sounds like a mental trick, like me tricking myself mentally, but I really believe it's not a trick, it's a truth. And the truth is, when I have a decision in front of me, like, man, should I do this or not? And we could make, let's say it's a decision, okay, should I commit and buy this big policy, for instance? Or should I commit to like make this really big investment? Or marriage is another great example. Should I make the commitment and actually follow through and actually marry this person?
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge decision, right? One of the things that I do is like, okay, do I want to get old, 99 and a half years old, whatever, sitting in my rocking chair on my front porch and thinking, I never took the risk. I'll never know what would have happened if I hadn't chosen to do that thing that required faith. And I knew, like when I married Shayna, I had no idea what was going to happen. Like I did the very best that I could do to make the wisest decision I could make with the person that I married. But do I know what she's going to be like, what I'm going to be like, what our marriage is going to be like in 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years? No, I don't know. But I felt the faith from God to do it.
Well, and the
And
truth is that that's why faith is fundamental. I mean, whether you're religious, whether you follow the Lord or
yeah,
not, faith is woven into the human existence.
yeah, and
Period.
then into our story,
There
absolutely.
is no way around it. I don't care
Hmm.
if you are an atheist or not. Everything is done in faith.
Hmm.
Everything. The future is unknown. You are not in control. And
Yeah,
so you're doing things today with limited knowledge in faith that it's actually going to happen.
yeah,
This is just the way it is,
yeah.
period. And I think so often the dangerous thing you can do is to try to live a life without faith in general. Like trying to be the more you try to control everything, the more out of control you will feel.
Yeah, we have this feeling or this sense as in our flesh as human beings, like, oh man, if I step out in faith, it's dangerous and risky. I don't know what's going to happen. It's actually way worse to have no faith and
It
never do
is.
anything based on faith. Here's another. I'll give you another. We talked about this before the podcast. I'll give you another example. I've had a goal for a long time, for 7 years, ever since I started IBC, of wanting to finance my children's the major purchases of their life, their housing, their vehicles, all that stuff. Um, but what if they don't want to borrow from me? Well, then I'll use the capital for some other opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what I love about IBC is because like the money that I build in my policies isn't tied to one idea. Like I'm going to pour all this money into IRAs and stuff. And well, what if the stock market does horrible? What if they
Yeah.
get rid of the stock exchange? I don't know later. I mean, I'm not troubled by the idea. Like it may be the case. Like my children may not want to participate in family banking. Well, if they don't, then there'll be some other opportunity. Well, how do you know that, Michael? I'm taking it by faith that capital attracts opportunities. Maybe I'll buy a recycling business. Maybe, maybe, maybe I'll start. I don't know. Maybe I'll
Yeah,
start a mission, a church mission in Peru.
yeah,
Who knows? I mean, it could be anything. But
that's
that's
right.
faith.
So the reality is, Michael, kind of what you're bringing up is what I was trying to say too, which is just simply when you do IBC, it's unlike other financial strategies in which the
Mm-hmm.
end is not defined. You
Yes.
don't know. That's
Mm-hmm.
actually the point.
Mm-hmm.
That's why there's power in it.
Yeah, well, that's partially why it's called infinite banking
Yeah.
because the how good it can get has no limit. Like
Yeah.
it's gonna get bigger and grow and grow and grow and grow and constantly become this
Yeah.
like I'm
There's, that's
like
exactly.
people like what
But he used the word
Ray?
infinite.
Yeah, well,
That he did. First off, infinite banking is the worst name ever given to anything. You know what I mean? Like, it, it's the most markety feeling name to describe like a sure thing. Like he should like it's anyway. I love it. But it is funny. It's like the stumbling block that you have to get over to try to get into it. But the reality is, it is infinite. When people try to dumb it down to the benefits of a whole life insurance policy, then
Mhm.
they're not doing IBC. The
Yes.
whole point of the life insurance policy, the whole purpose is that it is not an end in and of itself. It is a
Mhm.
beginning for what you're going to build onto your life.
Yeah.
And you have to compare it to the way most people build their life through retirement programs and all sorts of things
Mhm.
where money is locked up.
Mhm.
Then essentially there is no platform to build on. It's the end. An IRA is an end in and of itself for the most part. Now I know some people could
Mhm.
say, well, you can do self-directed and this and that. Sure, but
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
always
yeah.
limits. There's always things that you can do in infinite banking. The possibilities are endless. What you decide to do with your money is completely infinite. There is no limit to what you can decide to do. You can do anything you want with the
Mhm.
money. This is a new world for most people. They
Mhm.
haven't, so that's why we say it takes faith to do it. You're going
Yeah,
to enter
that's
in
right.
by faith. That's
Mhm.
what you're going to do.
Mhm.
And if you enter in just for the benefit of the whole life policy, sure, that's great. I'm just saying it's
And yep. And then if you want a practical approach to how to step into infinite banking by faith, honestly, Nate's 4 stages webinar is the best thing I've ever seen about that. Like how you can
yeah.
make different stair steps of different levels of commitment. Okay, what if I want to try it at the most basic level of commitment? What does that
Mm-hmm.
look like? What if
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to start at a higher level of commitment? What does that look like? What if I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to start at the basic level of commitment and have a plan to move to the higher level of commitment in a year or two? What would that look like? It's it's the best description, and the reason it is because again, you didn't make it up. That 4 stages webinar was it's a description of the process that you watched hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people go through, even thousands of people go through over the course of 12 years, and how people stepped into the world of IBC and what
Yeah.
actually happened over that course of time.
I love it. Yeah, exactly. I would call the 4 stages of IBC the pinnacle of my life's work in the world of infinite banking.
Yeah.
It was like the grand finale. I think that if anybody wants to go watch that webinar and watch it a few times and they understand what's being said, they will understand
Mm-hmm.
how they should be doing infinite banking
Mm-hmm.
in their own lives. Now, it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't do a very good job describing what IBC is to people. That's what the beginner's course is for. Nelson's book
Mm-hmm.
is for. The podcast is
The
for.
six
But that one
principles.
is,
Yeah.
yeah, that one, the 4 stages is meant for someone who's about to get started and trying to figure out what does it mean to get started. How are you
Yeah.
going to?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that encapsulates things better than
Yeah,
anything.
yeah, yeah. The 4 stages doesn't tell you why you should do infinite banking. It
Exactly.
tells you how.
Exactly. It's the best how there is.
Yep,
How you
that's right.
should implement it in your life. Four
Yep,
stages. Why
yep.
you should do it at all is not answering that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
you
It's
gotta
you
go
got
to
to watch other ones to go
uh,
before that. Yeah.
you got to decide why. Why does it make sense to you to do it? I think as I leave. I wish I had done this 12 years ago. Why should you do it? Because you have faith that there will be something amazing in the future as you remove the strings and the agendas from your money, and
Mm-hmm.
you open up to a world of money that you didn't know you could enter into.
Mm-hmm.
I've I've teased at this by calling IBC the gateway drug to financial freedom. I've
Mm-hmm.
teased at it. I've
Mm-hmm.
pointed at it in different ways. I
Mm-hmm.
just didn't actually understand until recently that, oh, what I'm talking about is faith. That's what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about getting rid of your agenda and opening your money up to an opportunity of agendas that you hadn't even known you could have. And
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the world of faith. That's what we're supposed to walk in as believers, no matter what, is this world of faith that you are saying, I'm getting rid of my agendas
Mm-hmm.
and I'm open to whatever God is going to decide for me to do. That
Mm-hmm.
is faith. And the same thing goes with money. So those were the three things, Michael. As my last dollars and nonsense podcast, that don't follow the herd, you'll get slaughtered over there. Do this,
Yep.
and you just understand that without faith, it's impossible to please God. So your number one goal for being a good steward of your money cannot be to get so rich for the sole focus of finally finding some sort of security apart from God. It doesn't
Yep.
exist. You'll realize it
Yeah.
today, and
You're chasing vanity there for
do not
sure.
do it.
Grasping the wind.
Be a good steward, but don't you check your heart. So you say, well, what should I be doing? Obeying God, which
Mm-hmm.
really just means don't consider your money as yours. Like that's the
Mm-hmm.
reality. That's the secret.
Yeah.
Don't consider what you have as yours.
Mm-hmm.
Consider it as God's. Period. It's not meant to give you security. It's not meant to give you wealth. It's not meant to give you luxury, comfort. Don't. I think God likes for you to be comfortable. I think God likes for you. I mean, He's a good God. He likes to do
Yeah.
good
Yeah. Yeah.
things for
A
you.
great father.
Just don't sit here and think that your money that you have is supposed to give that to you.
Right. It's him.
That's the hidden deception. That's the lie. It's not
Yep.
supposed to, God's supposed to give that to you. He can use money, but
Mm-hmm.
your money needs to be committed to Him. So don't build a life where there's no faith in your finances.
Yeah.
Infinite banking must be defined the way it defines itself. Don't try to redefine it to fit it into your life. Decide whether or not you want to build your life around it. That's how infinite banking operates.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and lastly, without faith, it's impossible to really do IBC, because the whole benefit of IBC is that you're entering into a world financially where you don't know where you're going to end up.
Mm-hmm.
Not, by the way, we think policies are actually the best at knowing where you're going to end up. I mean, they're the
Right.
only
That's a
bank in the world that
paradox.
has a guaranteed contract into the future with guaranteed cash values. Like, it is the most sure thing that exists in the financial world. But what we're saying is the benefit is actually not that. The benefit
Yes.
is that because you have it, you might end up, who knows where you're going to end up. Like,
Right.
it, who knows where you're going to end up. So you do it by faith. That's
Mm-hmm.
actually what should pull you in to do it,
Mm-hmm.
is the faith that it takes. And those three things,
Mm-hmm.
that's like the mic drop, Michael. That's
Yeah.
like, that's it. Now people get to decide.
Yeah. Yeah. That one of the things that I mentioned right before we started, Nate, is that if there's one thing that I would say about faith right now, there's a verse, it's in Ephesians. I think it's Ephesians 5. More than you could ask, think, or imagine. That is what God always provides when you step out in faith. It's when we try to control the outcome, we try to know where we're going to end up for sure. We try to find certainty in the way that we can plan and think and do things. What would be most tragic actually is if you actually did end up where you imagined where you could end up,
Mm-hmm.
because God says more than you could ask, think, or imagine. My mind is not able to imagine the place where God wants to take me. And that's why, and applying that to finances, that's why being in faith with our finances is critical, because then you get to go where God wants you to go,
Yeah.
where the place where He's imagined for you to be.
And so it can also kind of protect you from the fear of missing out and getting tickled by rates of
Yes.
return and all of these things that we've preached about on this podcast so many times. Is that when you're in faith and you're paying premiums by faith, you're paying loans back by faith
Yeah.
to do the will of God in the future. Like, that's the whole point, to allow Him to use the money, to allow Him
Mm.
to open up opportunities for you to be able to use. Then you don't have to look at, oh, did the stock market did really well last year, and I'm doing this stupid policy thing, and I wish I had, and protect you from it
Yeah.
because you're not doing it for the policy, you're doing it
Yeah.
in faith, knowing that
Mhm.
there's going to be things that happen. That's why we talk about barbell investments. It's the whole point. I didn't
Mhm.
understand it whenever I talked about them, but now I know why the concept is so powerful. Is
Mhm.
because yes, barbell invest to build your life around that actually requires faith. But the interesting thing is that it also makes you anti-fragile. So it that's the thing about faith. It's the paradox
Mhm.
that you don't know where you're going to end up, and the paradox is your attempts at trying to control things in the future always result in pain, and your attempts to not control future events result in
Blessing.
freedom.
Blessing
So
and freedom. Yeah, that's right.
it's huge. Well, as I said, guys, this is my last episode. It's been such a pleasure to be on this show for 8 years, to serve clients for 12 years, to give my life to infinite banking the way that I did. And it's
Mhm.
now my pleasure to follow the Lord into the next world of ministry where I'm starting out. I don't know where I'm going. I'm living out what I just preached to you.
That's right.
Yes, I don't know where I'm going to end up. I don't know what exactly the next step is going to be, but so right now I'm preaching at my local church that I attend right now. Every opportunity that I can get, I'm going to preach, and we're going to see where that ends up. If you want to follow along with it, as I said, you're welcome to. I'm going to be posting those sermons on the Nathaniel Scott YouTube channel. So you go to Nathaniel
Mhm.
Scott Ministries on YouTube, and you can watch me preach instead of talk about IBC, which is essentially what I just did.
Mhm. Mhm.
Deep down, but you can watch me preach there. You can also go to nathanielscott.org, and it's just kind of a placeholder website right now that if you want to get on the email list for the future, you're welcome to go sign up on my email list at nathanielscott.org. But other than that, Michael, it's been a blessing, man. It's been a
Yeah.
pleasure. It's been the
Bless you,
ride of a
brother.
lifetime. It's been such a fun experience that I wouldn't trade for anything, but I'm excited for the new, and I'm excited for you. I'm excited for living wealth. I'm excited for the future. I'm excited for
Yeah,
what's
me too.
with the clients. Like it, whenever people start obeying God and operating in faith, everyone in the vicinity gets blessed. Like
Yeah.
everyone in the radius gets their life
Mhm.
improved when somebody chooses to obey the way
Mhm.
Michael has, the way I am. So in other words, I think the best is yet to come. That's our hope.
Absolutely. Well, bless you, brother, and
Well, I'm going to
thank
sign
you for
off
everything.
then, here, Michael,
All
for the
right.
last time. This
All
has
right.
been Dollars
Well,
and Nonsense.
yep.
Follow the herd, you will be slaughtered.